I have the incredible privilege to glean some insight from two of the most creative minds in our industry today. And without further ado, it is my pleasure to welcome our very own Matt and Ross Duffer for the stage. Thanks so much for the video.
Hey guys, is this working?
Yeah.
Thanks for coming today. I guess we're going to start before we get into the questions. I feel like I'm doing like a TED Talk here. I should like pace around and.
I will say we've never given any sort of class before, so this could be disaster. But
it could be.
We'll see.
I guess I wanted to start out with some good news, which is for the people here that are in film or TV, that you can definitely succeed in this industry, because I know what it's like. Your parents are worried, your relatives. I mean, I would just remember going home and like, I'm doing film, and they're like, okay, when are they gonna do something real? Like, when are they gonna get a real job or a real, So I just want to say that you're not crazy. You can do this.
Some of you are.
Some of
probably.
you are, but ignore.
I mean, like.
Ignore that aunt who thinks you're just blowing your life away. So just ignore her and just keep going with it. I think the bad news is that it's really, really hard. And I know some people maybe point to us and go like, oh, well, look, the Duffers did it relatively quickly. But for us, it didn't. It felt like a very long journey, and it's still a journey. But to get here, and it was hard, and we almost gave up so many times, and you just feel beat up. And so when we knew we were going to talk to you today, we were discussing what should we say to them, and we were going, when we were at Chapman, what would have helped us? What lessons did we learn along this journey that maybe would have helped us? And I can't promise it'll help you, but it would have helped our younger selves if we could have known some of these going in. So I think we had. Is super cheesily. We had like 11 lessons, but then I think we lost one on the car ride over. We're like, that lesson is depressing.
Okay,
so
that joke. I can't. I told him not to do that joke because it was so stupid. It's such a dad joke.
It is.
Like you're getting. This is how we write, and just like God, that's so embarrassing. I told him not to do it on the car ride. He just did it.
I did.
All right.
So there's 10 lessons, 10 amazing lessons. I think you have the first lesson.
Well, yeah. I mean, some of these are fun, and some of them are a little depressing. But the first one is like really fun and easy, which is hopefully I'm assuming if you're here, you probably love TV or you love movies or both, hopefully, and it's really actually good and healthy to just watch a lot of stuff. There's nothing wrong with it. Like I like watch old movies, new movies, good movies, bad movies, television, as much like consume a lot. It's actually more important. I don't want to like diss on any teachers, but it's actually you can learn like the most important lessons we learned about storytelling came from watching stuff, because you're seeing the best storytellers in the world, some of the worst storytellers in the world try, and you're seeing even great storytellers try and fail. Right, is also a really powerful lesson. So like most of what we learn, and then you start to like absorb it, because I feel like there's like stories are like there's a specific rhythm to storytelling that works for like stories that work for human beings. So you start to kind of absorb that and learn from that. So that's a fun thing to do.
I remember it was one of our classes at Chapman, and there was this movie they were playing called Children of Paradise, and I remember you just had to do to get credit for watching the movie, you just had to sign the sheet, and there was no one there to like.
Well, it's like 3.5. It's like a 4-hour black and
movie.
white.
There's no one there to check that you sat to watch the movie. So kids are like, I'm going to sign the sheet, and then I'm going to leave. And I remember it's an incredible movie. Like it blew our minds. But I remember by the end of it, over half the class had gone, and I guarantee you that half that left that did not watch Children of Paradise did not succeed in the film industry. I think that's
true.
So the point of this lesson is watch Children of Paradise, but watch old movies, new movies, bad movies, everything. And when we met, luckily with Stranger Things, we were able to meet some of these guys that inspired us in the first place. And that's always what they're saying. They're like, don't watch my movies, watch Turner Classic Movies. And we could be better about it, but you need to learn from the masters. It's lesson 1, right?
Yeah, that's lesson 1.
And the second lesson is so we loved movies and we watched movies. So we applied to Chapman and we were so excited to be in the film school. And I think for us, sort of the second lesson we learned while we were at film school is just, and it's obvious, but just in terms of just work, the kids that worked hard, the hardest were the ones that succeeded. The ones that I know that were there, we mostly weren't in this facility. We were in DeMille Hall. It was tiny. It was like tiny, but I loved it. For 3 years we were in there, and it was just, there was a core group of kids that were just there every day. They're up there at 3 in the morning. They tried to get me to smoke. I'm like, I'm not going to smoke, but they were always.
That's the thing. Don't smoke.
Don't smoke.
Smoke
That
what?
Is that still a thing at film school?
I don't
That's
know.
gross.
But
I'm sorry. It's like gross.
But my point is they were always there,
Right.
and everyone was just busting their ass. They were helping each other out, and it's like, I have a technical error on my Avid, and then they'd help you out, and you all just sort of worked together. It was this little team, and a lot of those guys, we have Justin Simeon, who went on to do Dear White People. He was one of them. Mike Mohan, who's now doing a Netflix show.
It's called Everybody Sucks. It's coming out.
Yeah, it's going to be awesome. Ben Jones, who did Like Crazy and is also working with Mohan on that. Maylene Williams, who is one of the biggest ADs now in the business.
Or it's funny, remember
True
like
Detective
remember
and huge
Tashi.
things.
There's a kid named Tashi who whenever we're not very technically savvy, so our Avids were always not working properly. I don't know if you guys still have this problem, but anyway, so nothing was ever working, so we'd always go to Tashi to fix our issues, and he was always around. And now he does it for us at Technicolor. Like, we're still working with Tashi. He's still solving our technical problems.
Yeah, it's true.
It's amazing. Anyway.
But it's another one. That was just something I realized once people started to make it into film industry. You're not like shocked that kid made it. You're like, of course Justin Simeon succeeded, because you knew it back in the day.
Yeah, that's true. And then the other, I was wondering how many people want to direct. Okay, there's, oh, you do. Okay,
The hands
good.
are going up.
Then this isn't going to be a waste. So I was like, so we were like, oh, we only, we really wanted to direct. That was all we were interested in. And like, so we did a lot of stupid stuff in college, I look back and I was like, I'm such an idiot. But one of the smartest things we did was we realized that, in terms of, we probably weren't going to make a short film like that was going to suddenly launch us into some major movie career, that like we needed to learn to write, and that was going to be the most valuable thing that we could have, which is a script that people wanted, and that we could leverage that. And so if you want to direct, I think you should teach yourself to write. Like we did not think of ourselves as writers at all. It's
Still
like
don't.
I still don't really think of myself as a writer. But if you watch movies, the language of like visual storytelling of movies and television. Like you can sit down and do it. And you're gonna write like 3 really bad scripts and just make peace with that. But then what you can do is, if you have a piece of material like that, like people are desperate for scripts for material actually. There's not like executives sitting around like, oh my God, there's so much good stuff. What do I do with all this? It's like garbage. So if you want to direct, and that's to me the smartest way into it. I mean, you always hear about kids who make some like a 5-10 minute short film that blows and wows everyone, and they get some sort of feature deal. But I feel like that's so rare.
Because like Bob mentioned the Tony Sella thing, which is great, but it didn't lead to anything. Like, so you were like, for a second, you're like, oh my God, we did it. We made the short film that's going to get us a job. And it's like, no, it doesn't. It's probably not going to get you the job, the short film.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm not discouraging from making the
No.
short. I mean, that's incredibly important, like making films here.
Just don't expect to get a $200 million feature off of it.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
really the
And
lesson
make
there.
peace with writing. You're not going to like it, but just.
And I think,
Do
and
it.
then for the writing, that the sort of the lesson that we learned that took a while for us to learn while we were writing is to not overthink it, because we're not writers. We don't see ourselves as writers, and you're trying to write this sort of, it's almost like you're thinking of like you're trying to write this great movie or this great novel, and you're trying to be so fancy about it. And that should not be your first goal in the screenwriting class. The first goal, and it's actually way harder than it seems, is just to write something that works. Just works at all on any level, because that was our biggest struggle in there, was just we're trying to be too fancy. And you look and listen, you're breaking down great movies, and I don't know if they're still teaching like a 7-act structure, but I remember breaking down movie to movie and just trying to figure out this mathematical formula. But there is not really perfect magical formula. The idea is that if you've been watching movies, like Matt's saying, if you're just obsessed with this stuff, it should be ingrained in you. Though, if the scene's boring, it's because there's not enough tension. The plot needs to be moving forward. Like, it should already be in your brain. And so at a certain point, you need to just throw all that out and just try to tell a story. And a simple story. I remember the first time, most of our scripts didn't work, and the first one that kind of worked, we just did a very simple thing because we were frustrated with the writing process. And we're like, okay, this guy is going to wake up in the morning, and he's going to realize that he has 12 hours to live. And it was just a little exercise for us, which is that there's automatic tension in every scene when we know this guy's going to die. And that was the first script that we wrote that was like, okay, maybe, this is working a little bit. It's at least moving forward. And that's the script that led us to our first agent.
It's funny because we got to work with Andrew Stanton this year, who's a Pixar guy, and we love him because he wrote Toy Story, and he wrote WALL-E, and Finding Nemo, some of the greatest, tightest screenplays ever. And so and Pixar is if anybody has figured this out, it's Pixar. And so I'm talking to him because it's such a struggle for us, and just talking to Andrew and being how did you guys crack the code? And he's like, we haven't. It's they figured out every part of the process. The animation part of the process, the marketing part, they've got it all down to science, and except for the writing. And there's it's just never going to figure out. So at some point, you just have to kind of feel your way through it. So that was a little bit depressing. I was like, oh. It made me feel a little bit better about myself. It's not like we're doing something wrong, but also, this is always going to be
a struggle.
Terrible. Terrible. It's never, it's never going to get easier. And I mean, that's the other lesson. It was there are no, in terms of things not being easy, is we kind of learned there are no real shortcuts to it. I mean, we're just from the middle of nowhere in North Carolina, so we didn't know anyone. We didn't have any connections. And I do see this now. It's sometimes people come up to us, they don't even know us, they'll try to, they'll hand me a script or something to read, and it's that's just never going to work. And I feel so don't give me your scripts, is what I'm trying to say. But also, no, but I would read your script. I mean, it really does, but what you have to do is you have to earn people's respect. So, it was good, I think, one of the best things to come out of Chapman is, they were intern. It's really important. And that is true. I mean, it really was important for us to get up to Hollywood. And, you start to work at these production companies. First of all, it's good. You just get to read a lot of scripts that are selling. You start to read this stuff, and it's this is not good. It's it starts to give you confidence because you're these people are making money writing this garbage. I can do this. And then, and so you get confidence from there, and then you start, you do coverage on scripts, which if you don't know what that is you just summarize a script, tell what's good and bad about it. And we spent years doing a couple, 2-3 years.
But even a lot of it isn't even covered. I remember it was I had this producer. I had to sit at his apartment while it got cleaned. It was you do do
what you got to do.
You do what you got to do. You make the copies. You deliver the Christmas presents, and it sucks. And you just put in your time. You don't give them your script or your short film right then, right? You just have to earn. You have to earn it. And it's those black swan interns that suit. It's no, you gotta put in you gotta get the coffee for everyone, and you gotta earn their respect, and then they start giving you more responsibility, and they start to trust your opinion, and then you keep building on that, and that's when with that script where it's the guy's gonna die. It's not the best script ever, but I was hey, will you read my script? And they read the script, and then that got us our first agent. And then we were well, now we've made it. We're big time.
We're boom.
We're this is I'm gonna be Entourage now. We were so excited that we had this big time agent, and he's getting you in the meetings of these big production companies. And actually, but this was the time because this was right after we graduated Chapman. And we had our short film, and we had our script, and we had our agent, and it's oh my God, we did. This was the plan, and it actually worked, and we're going to be fine. But the period between that and selling our first thing was by far. I don't want to depress you, but it's by far the hardest time of our lives. And I hated high school, and this was way worse.
Yeah.
This was so much worse than high school, it's sad. And because really what it is you're going into these production companies and no one cares about you because you're not a success, you're just at the bottom of the barrel, and you're pitching them some story that you don't even care about. And I remember at the time, it was like Paranormal Activity had come out, and so it was a lot of found footage stuff. I don't even like found footage movies, but you find yourself in these rooms going, and then, Stacy's going to bring her camera over here, and it was depressing us because we weren't even excited about these movies. The executives we were pitching to weren't excited by our ideas, which isn't surprising because they weren't even very good. And then, but you still put in, weeks and weeks of time and effort, and then it's 20 minutes and they go no. And it just happened again and again and again, and you just get beat up to the point where we were out of money and we were just like, we're done.
Yeah, I mean, but that's when you almost forget that you have to really remind yourself of why you're doing it in the first place. And I think we saw like Gareth Edwards, who went on to Star Wars, but like he had put out this small movie Monsters, and it was like, and he just made this movie on his own, and it was something he was clearly very passionate about, and he got it out there and he made it. And we're like, what are we doing? Why are we pitching found footage movies? Like, why aren't we doing something that we love and care about? And so that was kind of the first time we sat down and we wrote something like personal that was just something, a small movie that we felt passionate about, that was just for, that we were like, we're gonna make, also we're not gonna sell this as a script, we're gonna direct this. And it was the first time that writing like wasn't a struggle for us, and it came out really quickly. And it was the first time when you're handing it out to your agents, I felt like I didn't feel worried about it. Like I felt like it's something had clicked for the first time. And then it was supposed to be an indie movie, and then suddenly we had two major studios bidding on it, and that started a bidding war. And that was the first time we had sold something professionally. And that was like a really big lesson for us. I still pull from today in terms of write what you love, and try to ignore all the noise of what people are telling you they want. And I think that's really hard because it's such a difficult road that you're trying to figure out the system, and you're trying to play into what people want and what the studios want because it feels so impossible. And the act of doing that ended up really derailing us for a couple years.
That's right. And then so we did make this movie, and this is the sort of the other depressing lesson that we learned, that even when you think you're in and think you've succeeded, it's still hard because Warner's like, it was just we don't have 2 hours, so I won't go into it, but I think Bob hinted at it. It was just not a good experience, and the movie ended up being dumped, and we were just sort of, it felt like you're back. It's like they let you in the door, and then they were like, sorry, we didn't mean to do that, and they just kicked us back out. And so it's like we were back almost to square one.
I still feel like this. I feel like someone accidentally let you into the party. You know what I mean? Like a party you shouldn't be at. And then, so it felt like we got in. We're like, oh man, maybe we do belong here. And then they were like, no, no. So, and it's a terrible feeling.
It is awful. It's almost worse than not being able to get into the party.
It is. Because then you go, well, I'm too cool for the party anyway, or you make some sort of...
They just don't see how good I am. No, it's like they saw how you were, and they were like, no, get out of here.
Get out.
That was really depressing. And this is sort of the next lesson to us is that there is some element of luck involved in all of this. In our case, it was that we had you create your own luck in some ways, in that we had written... our first script was very M. Night Shyamalan, like there was a twist.
Well, when
at
we
the
were
end.
when we were growing up, it was like middle school to high school. Like Shyamalan M. Night had this amazing run. It was like Sixth Sense and Signs and Unbreakable, and like it was exactly the type of storytelling we wanted to do. It's like ordinary versus and the extraordinary. So yeah, our first movie, the one that had sold, was very Shyamalan-y, and somehow, without us even just doing nothing, it somehow wound up in his hands, and he's like, I love this script. And I was like, yeah, no shit, dude. It's like, it's you. It's like, you love yourself. And then anyway, he was like, I want you to come help me with this television show on Fox. And we weren't even thinking about television.
We were just depressed.
Yeah, we were just like, yeah. And then we flew to Pennsylvania. He has like a huge mansion in the middle of nowhere in Pennsylvania. It's ridiculous. And we spent like a couple weeks with Knight, this guy whose storytelling inspired us, and he kind of like reinvigorated us, and like he got us back into. We actually had a really amazing experience with him, and he got us into TV. He kind of forced Fox to accept us and let us like basically, really take charge of the show, and he got us writing again. And so we've started to write really, really quickly for the show because they were behind schedule as a whole thing. But but more than that, it got us like television credits, and this happened to be around the time that there was an ad for True Detective. There was like Soderbergh was coming out with The Nick. Like TV was starting to get like really interesting and exciting to us, and we saw like how movies were merging with television, and we had this idea that we couldn't figure out how to do it as a movie, and we started to think about it, what it would look like as a long form movie on a Netflix-like platform. And so that's when we kind of went back to our old lesson of, we wrote, we had Wayward Pines, we did that. We had the money from that. We took a year off, or half a year off, with the money that we had from that. And then we just developed, the show that became Stranger Things.
And I think for us, it was writing, in really even more so than our first thing, writing what we loved, which is let's go back to the stuff that inspired us to do this in the first place. But then of course, you get people that don't understand it, and they didn't understand why kids were the leads in something that wasn't necessarily intended for children. They certainly didn't understand why we wanted to direct it, considering our movie had been dumped. And so it took a lot of, for us, it was a difficult time in terms of like, we felt strongly that this was like our baby, and we wanted to control how it went out in the world. And first of all, you face a lot of rejection because people like, well, we don't want your baby, and it's ugly. And then,
that is true because it was so funny. It was a week of pitches, and you're just pitching your heart out. And it was all passes by the end of the week. Like, it was like there were some people who thought about it.
No, but there was one that was like, we will do this, but you can't direct. And that was the hardest, that there was one that said yes, and you can't direct. And we just said, sorry, then you can't have it. And that was the hardest thing because it was like, well, we could watch our baby from a distance grow up. Like, it would have a nice life, but we're like, no, we'd rather sabotage our baby. It's what we decided.
No, but we got, at the end of the week, we got a call from our agents, and they said, they said, listen, guys, it's a special project, and we're going to find a special home for it. Don't worry. And I was like, oh my God, that's just not the phone call you want to get. That it needs a special place for it to exist. Anyway, but the point of that is at a certain point, you do need to bet on yourself. And actually, in the industry, if you say no, people go crazy. It's like very powerful to say no to people. And so we ended up betting on ourselves, and that ended up really paying off. So I don't know if that added up to 11.
It's 10. I told you it was 10. We got rid of the depressing
I feel like
one.
we added one in there. I'm going to say it was 11. Those are 11 lessons.
Well, that's good. So I guess we should probably get into some Q&A
Sure,
here.
yeah.
So those were great lessons, and I hope you're all taking copious notes, because I have been. And kind of what I took away from that was, you find purpose, you find inspiration, you have to have fortitude, you have to have perseverance, create your own luck, love what you do, and consume what you do.
Yeah. Well, that sounded good.
And be energetic. Right? So does that sound about right?
That sounded, really
That's right.
nice.
And you can't let...
I needed that at the end.
You can't let the man get you down.
That's true.
Yeah, you
That's
can't
right.
let the man get you down.
That's very true.
That's true.
But anyways, that was really great. Actually, I think your lessons that provided a real good perspective that it's not easy.
Right.
It's not easy, and you have to work at it. So anyways, I have a few questions. What we're going to do is we're going to do about 30 minutes Q&A. I'm going to do about 15 minutes, and then we're going to open it up for the audience. So I have a handful of questions, actually more than a handful, but I'll just ask some that I think are a little bit more relevant that we didn't already cover. I think that, one, we have I guess you might say a couple different generations. We have the current generation of filmmakers in here, and then today in the audience we have, I think, 40 students from OSHA. Where are you at? Oh, here you are. There we go. Good. So these are the next generation of creators, creators in the industry and arts and entertainment. So what advice would you give to your freshman self today?
I think I would read those 11 lessons that that we just gave. I don't know. Do we have anything to add to it? I mean, I think the biggest thing is that you're going. And I remember. I guess this is the depressing lesson, the 11th lesson that I didn't add, which is that I remember when the show came out and it was a success. You get a lot of emails and people reaching out, and some of the people that reach out are people that inspired us in the first place. And these are filmmakers that we grew up loving, and we wouldn't be here without them. And so it was amazing to hear from them. And every email we got was incredible. But the one that stuck with me the most was this guy. I won't say his name, but he's an amazing, amazing filmmaker. And he said, just remember, I guess I'll curse. He just remember you will fuck up. And that was, to me, that if I could tell myself like that, and it's okay. His thing is it's okay. Like even now with the success, you're gonna fail, and you're gonna fail, and you're gonna fail, especially when you're Chapman. You're going out in the real world, and that's okay, and you can learn from those failures, and you can grow from them. You just have to accept that that's just part of the process. And
I think it's hard because what you're doing, when you're telling stories, you're like really putting yourself out there. And I think so when you get, rejected or something doesn't work, it can feel very personal. You know what I mean? I think that's the hardest thing is just getting knocked down and standing back up again and putting yourself out there over and over again.
And I think that's a big difference between people who make it and who don't, is that the ones that love it so much that they can't imagine doing anything else, that's why when they get knocked down, they can get back up. And whether it's people not liking, a movie you make that you spend 2 years of life on, or it's even if it's like, oh, I made this short film for class and it gets knocked. It doesn't matter. It hurts every time, right? And you have to just go, okay, what can I learn from this? And you just keep building yourself back up, and you get up and you do it again. And it's hard, but you do it.
Well, that's a great lesson. It's really about vulnerability and making yourself vulnerable, because really at the end of the day, if you don't do that, you're not going to find out more about yourself.
That's right.
Yeah, and you have the first thing you put out there, or whatever you put out there, it's not going to be necessarily embraced, and to not take that too much to heart.
Awesome. All right, I'm going to talk a little bit about the show. So I was particularly impressed with the attention to detail that you brought in that show. It was I believe it was a huge differentiator that helped contribute to the success of the show. Now, I was in 1983, November 6th. I was a teenager in high school. So when I looked at the show, and I'm looking literally at all the detail, I couldn't believe how well you guys had captured that era. And for me, so I was kind of wondering, what sort of research did you put into doing that? Because to me, it was phenomenal.
Something like this, though, it takes so many people. So I feel like that the world it's very, it's such a part of my life and childhood, even though I was born in '84, so I feel like I'm cheating a bit. But this is the movies and the worlds that I fell in love with when I was growing up. So a lot of it is there, and then a lot of it, though, the tiny little, all those little details, whether it's the wallpaper or the bed sheets or whatever, really has to do with the team that we've brought in, because it's such a huge production. And so we just have this amazing production designer, an amazing set dresser, and they just go around scouring everywhere they can in Atlanta to find these little nuggets, and they just bring it to life.
I do agree. I think the attention to detail is like something that, in the best filmmakers and stuff, is something that I really admire. When you talk about people, there's like people I grew up admiring, is like Michael Mann or like Peter Weir, like they tend to be obsessive, or David Fincher, they're like obsessive personalities. And like I see, like they're obsessing over every single frame and every cut and every edit and every music choice. And I do believe that even, that it adds up, and it does, like you're saying, it does end up at the end of the day making a really big difference. And it gives it sort of a handcrafted quality to it.
Well, it shows
yeah.
that you care. It shows that you care about what
Yeah.
you're outputting, the creation of your content for audiences to see. And so, again, well done. Well
Thank you.
done. It kind of part two, and you kind of mentioned it, even though you're cheating on your generation, as you said. So
Yeah.
I'm not quite sure if I'm going to let you in yet. So we'll see. But you bridge generations with that time period, and again, the attention to detail. With today's generation, clearly, again, 15.6 million viewers, 361,000 binge watching on the first day. Someone like me who grew up in that era, I think you're bridging generations. And was that an intentional as part of your creative process?
Well, we were we wrote it for ourselves. We're like, what would we love? And then you do have to be pragmatic about it. And you're like, well, how do I make this sound good in a room? And so I thought we were making that aspect of it up, actually, when we pitched to Netflix. We're like, it's got teens, and it's got kids, and it's got adults, and it's going to appeal to all those generations. And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, because you say things, it's like Lost. I'd actually never seen Lost, but I was like, I knew that would be something they'd like. So you kind of embellish it a little bit. I thought that was one of the aspects of it that there's a salesman quality to the pitch of it. Like, you can BS a little bit, and that was it. I thought that we were BSing a little bit. I mean, I did kind of deep down hope that maybe kids, but I was like, I don't know what kids these days are into. I was like, I don't know. I can't imagine. It kind of blows my mind that's my favorite part of it. That young like 11-year-olds are into the show because it's this type of storytelling that we grew up watching.
And they're not nostalgic for it.
They're not,
really,
yeah, the
right?
nostalgia aspect. So whenever people go, it's just nostalgia, I'm like, well, then how come this 11-year-old is liking it? That doesn't make it, they're not nostalgic for it.
I don't even know what an Atari was.
They don't know what it is. Well, they're nostalgic for an era they didn't realize they're nostalgic for. Like, what are you talking about? Anyway, but I do think it has to do with we have younger protagonists, and we have these kids who we found who I think they identify with those kids. I think maybe that's, I don't know. I mean, this is the thing, you can start to overanalyze why something works, and this is dangerous, because then you're trying to figure out how to manufacture.
Well, because then you go, exactly what I'm saying is you don't want, when I was saying people are trying to replicate paranormal activity when we were around, you don't want people being like, hey, what's your kids on bikes pitch?
Yeah, let's deconstruct why was Stranger Things successful. And it was like, that's exactly the wrong mindset to have. Because when we went around pitching, I mean, it's crazy now, but it's like, no one liked that it was in the 80s, and no one liked that there were children in it, okay? So it's like, at a certain point, like, stop listening to in terms of what's proven to be working right now, I guess, in the marketplace, you really do need to shut all of that out. And just listen to yourself.
Great answer. Great answer. By the way, baffle with BS or dazzle with brilliance. I think it was the latter. It ultimately ended up being.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So a little bit about your experience here at Chapman.
Yeah.
Was there a project or professor at Chapman that specifically helped guide you?
I was looking at it's like I sensed that the
You
question
did.
was coming, and I locked in on Kowalski over there.
Raise your hand. There we go.
Professor Kowalski.
I just feel like, I mean, I don't know if it was a specific project. It was just, I just remember it was Kowalski. It's like that group of kids that were always there, that were just hanging around DeMille Hall. It was like Kowalski was like the little leader of everyone. He was always there. Like, he was just always there. And he would just be helping people with their projects, and it was just a positivity. And it just felt like this amazing group of people that just really cared about it. I think that, honestly, if we took anything out of Chapman, it was like this group of kids that all cared about film, and you're all learning, but you're helping each other out, and and film is so collaborative that, I mean, you learn as much from each other as any class. It's just sort of, you're all out there just feeling it out, and then Kowalski was always there.
Yeah, he was
guiding.
just corralling us, making sure, you're sort of staying in the correct lane, but mostly leaving us alone.
But you could go in there. It's like, you go in there and be like, and he would just guide you in the correct direction. So I mean, when I think back at Chapman, those are sort of the fondest memories that I have. Not necessarily a specific class. It's just, hanging out of the halls in Kowalski going, "What are you doing?" Can
Well,
I see?
It's a big endorsement for you. What about, and I think this is an area that always needs to be focused on, or at least thought about, and particularly for young filmmakers.
Yeah.
What about the business side? What's your point of view? Is that if you had a piece of advice for students that are getting ready to graduate or just starting out, as freshmen, sophomore, what would you tell them about the business side of the industry and what you've learned?
Man, it's dangerous because it's shifting and changing so much so fast right now that I feel like whatever I say is going to be dated in like tomorrow. I don't know. I mean, to me, that kind of thinking is what got us into trouble in the first place.
What do you mean by that?
By thinking about the business aspect of it and what the marketplace needed, what was the hot new trend, what's selling, what's working, what's not. And like we didn't, that I feel like that was kind of it was like a leash or something. It was like preventing us from doing good work. And so it was only when I stopped thinking about the business. Like it can be really deadly, I think, like looking at the Variety, Hollywood Reporter, and Deadline every day, even though I do it. Like I feel like there's something a little toxic about it.
Well, I remember depressing. It's like, oh, this person sold the script, this person sold the script, and you're just like, oh my God, I'm never, it would be like you'd be jealous, and so that's dangerous. Yeah. But I think that in terms of the business, I mean, the great thing about it right now is and I hope it sustains. And again, like Matt's saying, it might become dated. Is that, I mean, I think all you do need to know is that there's such a need for content out there. And people need it when in their new places like Netflix or Hulu or now Apple. Like every day, it's like someone else is getting into this business, and they all need stuff. And I think that if we had come into the business if we were 5 years earlier, I don't know if we would have succeeded. It was just that there's Netflix. We didn't realize it at the time because I remember when we went in there, we were just thought it was a joke because they had really at the time it was. David Fincher doing House of Cards, and it was Gingy Cohen doing Orange is the New Black, and that was pretty much it. And so those are extremely established names, and we had a movie that had been dumped, and we're like, there's zero chance of them doing this show. And when they ended up buying the show and greenlighting it, what we didn't realize at the time is we were just at the beginning of essentially a new phase for them, which is they're going to start trying to get as much content as possible, as many shows out every week. And so we were just one of those many shows. We were just very early on. But what's exciting about that is it gives an opportunity for new voices that maybe didn't have a chance before. Because the problem with the film business that we ran into, and we ran into with our movie, is that even if you make a movie for $5 million or $10 million, to get it out into the world, it's huge expense. It's an enormous expense. $40-50 million just to make people aware that it's out there, much less they're going to go see it. And then suddenly, you really need to make that money back. And then you start having people breathing down your neck, and generally, they're not even going to greenlight it unless it's a superhero movie, or it's like almost a guarantee. And so to us, what's exciting though is like that's a bummer, but it is exciting that there are all these other avenues. You can make an independent film and get it distributed online, or you can make a television show, which there's more and more need for that out there. And we didn't have a $50 million marketing budget when Stranger Things season 1 came out. It just kind of went out, and they're like, I think people will find this. We're like, I hope so. But you don't know. Yeah. You don't know. It's scary, but still, it was like we had the story we wanted to tell. They let us tell it. And then they're like, we think it'll find an audience.
It's actually, yeah, I think you guys are like, it's actually a really exciting, good time to be coming out of film school. And I think it's going to be I think it's kind of like this mad rush right now, and I think it's going to be that way for a little bit of time. No, I think this is as good a time as any.
Before someone makes the Heaven's Gate of TV and it all comes
crashing
down.
Probably be us. We'll bring it crashing down.
Yeah.
We're going to spend way too much money on a TV show.
I know.
That bombs.
Well, that's great. Listen, there's.
Yeah.
Kidding. So again, there's a high need for content today. The consumption of content has never been higher.
That's
I think the distribution channels, the opportunities have never been wider.
Right, exactly.
That's right.
And who knows what may even happen in the future here. But I agree with you. I think that the opportunity is there. But I also think that it'd be important to understand what are all those distribution opportunities and to kind of tailor or at least understand what you may need to do.
And I will say, I mean, in our 11 lessons, it was a little bit of like, do what you love and whatever. It was tailored to an extent that we saw an opening. Yeah. And so we go, what's a story that we would love to tell that might fit in this new box? Like there is a calculated business aspect to it of that decision, but at the same time you're going, what would I love? And actually that's what opened up the opportunity. Is like there's this new, sandbox to play in, and let's bring all of our old toys that we love. Yeah.
So lesson 12, being opportunistic.
Exactly.
All right. So, anyways, enough of my questions. I want to open it up for the audience. Oh, we got a lot of hands here. So, let's see. Why don't we start? I'm gonna start over here with the left. Would you stand up? Second row here. You got your hand up. There you go. Let's start here. And if you could say your name, please.
Oh, yeah, sure. Hi, I'm Tim.
Hey, Tim.
I think really like the show a lot.
Thank you.
One thing I got out of watching Stranger Things was that it juggles really well, like in that fine line between taking homage from like all the other like 80s movies and TV shows, but not making it too obvious to the point where people call out and say it's like a ripoff. How do you like juggle in between those two?
Yeah.
I think what it was. I think we were naive on season 1. We weren't expecting so much focus on the references, but I think that what it is that for us at least it was, and we still get called out for that, by the way. It's not like we don't, but I think it was going back and just discussing as opposed to specific moments necessarily. It's like, what do we love about these movies? And it can be something as simple as, in Poltergeist and all the great imagery in that film, the most iconic moment is just a television with static on it. It's something very simple. And so you just talk about why that worked, and it's about, again, that meeting of the ordinary and extraordinary. And we can take Spielberg can take an ordinary object like a TV, and he can make it come to life, and everyone has a TV. And so then suddenly everyone's looking at their own TV and wondering if it's, a portal to another dimension. And so, that's where you start coming up with ideas, whether it's, Joyce talking to her son through Christmas lights. So it's more about taking about what worked about these movies than it is about, trying to be cute or referencing specific moments. I mean, sometimes we can't help ourselves, but generally it's just more about why did we love these movies in the first place, what worked, and hopefully trying a little bit to follow in those footsteps.
Oh, great. Oh, right here. There we go.
Hi. So my question is, so I want to write for TV someday.
Awesome.
So I was wondering what makes your writing process unique, and how has it like evolved and changed and grown like away from or basically how is it different from like what you learned in film school?
Yeah, I mean it's evolved. I think I think you have to find what works for you. You know what I mean? Like I don't think. So what I'm basically saying is maybe you should not listen to what I'm about to tell you. What we do. Like if it doesn't work for you, I'll just say what works for us, because we do have a very specific process. Like, I don't know.
And it took a while to find.
It did took us. Yeah, exactly. We had to like mess around a lot till we figured out. Okay, this is sort of working for us, which is that. I mean, there's two of us. I don't know if you have a writing partner or not. No, you're by yourself. Okay. Do you have you work on final draft, but like what? So we because we work together. So we just go on, Google Docs because it allows us to be on the same document at the same time, and then we outline it together. And I'm a big believer in, in structure and outline. I mean, we feel it out as we go. I mean, so it's not It's not mathematical, but we like roughing it out, not in script form. But some people, I don't do this, but some people like to do a vomit draft. They like to just like spit it all out and read it. So it just depends on what your process. But we like to start zoomed way out, which is what we're doing now. But it's like you start zoomed out, get in a little, get a little more detail, a little more detail, a little more detail, until you feel very confident about it. Then you translate it.
Well, and generally by the time we start way out, and then you start going in, and eventually get into scene work. But even when we're in scene work and we're working out these scenes, we're breaking it in outline form still. And so by the time we actually get to script form and we're in final draft, it's almost like a formality. We know that it works at a zoomed out point of view, and we know going in, and of course the dialogue and the scenes shift, but at least we know the A to B to C.
But the reason we do this is because like if you're zoomed all the way in on a scene, you could spend 2 days or more, getting this 3-page scene to work. Then when you read it all the way through, there's no reason for that scene to even exist. So you just waste it. We cut out by taking the time up front to make sure the structure is more or less right. We save ourselves a lot of time, and it expedites things.
Yeah.
So.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Jay. Nice to meet you guys. So you guys have been together pretty much since birth.
That's
what
true.
made you guys want to pursue film together as the Duffer Brothers instead of just Matt and Ross?
Well, we saw.
We've just been doing this for so long.
Yeah, we saw. Well, it was like 1989, and we saw we were like little tiny dudes, and we saw a TV commercial for like Batman, Tim Burton's Batman. I was like, oh my God, this looks amazing. Michael Keaton's flying through the sky. I didn't know who Michael Keaton was, but it was amazing. It looked so incredible. So then we saw it. We eventually like, Mom, I gotta see this movie. Eventually we saw it, blown away. Then I was like, Tim, who's this guy, Tim Burton? And then I started we started to track Tim Burton because he, as a kid, he's almost like the ultimate kid filmmaker because his style is so distinct. We loved the Danny Elfman music and stuff, so that's how we started to figure out what a director does. And then we just started like any other kid, we just would play and make up stories together with our toys. But the only difference, I guess, between us and other kids is we knew movies were 2 hours long, so we set a timer for 2 hours. So it was like, and it was like 15 minutes would be left. We're like, we better start wrapping this up, you know what I mean? Start like getting to the climax. So that was like really little. It was like we were like pre-K and kindergarten, and so I don't know. So it's never really been a question. It's like we're fairly dysfunctional apart, I would say, and so I don't know. It's one of the reasons we're at Chapman because Chapman was like I remember we were like considering going to Florida State, which is a great film school, and they're like you can't work together though, and we're like what? And Chapman was like yeah sure. Come here, work together, and that's what we did. Chapman always let us work together.
Sure.
Made our senior thesis together. So anyway, no, it's always been what we do.
Thank you.
Awesome. We have about 5 minutes.
Okay. Hi, I was just wondering how the writing process between season 1 and season 2 kind of differed. When you were writing season 1, did you have season 2's plot in mind, or did it kind of just come after it was greenlit?
We knew I remember though it was originally pitched as I like to maybe I shouldn't say this because I like to pretend it's all planned out, but it was originally pitched as a limited series. So it was like 11 was going to sacrifice herself, was going to save the world, and then that was going to be it because there was a moment where limited series were a big deal, and this is where the business side comes in. When we started pitching, everyone's like, we don't make money off limited series anymore. And so I remember we went into Netflix and we pitched this. They're like, how we like this, but how could it keep going? And you're just sort of riffing in the moment. And we're like, well, Will's back from this other dimension. He's not doing very well. And they're like, great. And we're like, all right, we got a series.
That's true. No, but it's funny. We're working with another writer now, and he was telling me, he had to go in. He said Netflix made them pitch the whole 5 season arc, and we told him this story. He's like, "What the hell, man? Are you kidding me?"
I think in terms of writing process, I mean, we're learning season to season because we've never done this. First season was a huge room of other writers, and it was too much for us. This second year was like even less. This year sort of an in between. So, the writing, it was new for us because we're just used to doing this by ourselves to bring other people in. But that part has been fun. Just because the writing process can be so painful, so it's nice to share the pain with
I don't
other
think it's
people.
bad. I don't think it's a bad idea. We were very resistant to letting other people into our world, but I think it's like if you can find someone who you sync up with.
Even not as a writing, it doesn't have to be, you don't be writing the scripts together, but even if you have a group or whatever that can help,
I would never now write with just him. You know what I mean? It's like really nice to have other people with other points of view who aren't off sync with you. I mean, they love the same stuff that you love, but it's like a support network and someone to help you solve problems when you run into them. I think it's really cool.
Hi, my name is Melissa. Nice to meet you. My question is, now working together, how do you deal with disagreements between each other?
What disagreements? I don't know what
Yeah,
you're
but-
talking about. The writing stage, that's usually when the disagreements come, because that's when story's being formed. And honestly, when we're writing, that's where we're figuring out the shots. I mean, we see it as a sort of the first step in directing. So on set, it's pretty. We're on the same
great.
team.
Yeah, writing is we'll have Google Doc disagreements. We don't even talk to each other. We're be on headphones, and he'll write something down I don't like. I delete it, and then he writes it back in. I'll delete it again, and then the headphones come off, and we're like, all right, let's talk this out. I won't say we do have arguments. I mean, it's not a big. It helps when you're a sibling. You can say really mean stuff to each other. You get over it, and the next day, So, but we're trying to be better about it. It's difficult collaborating with people on something. I mean, something to collaborate that intensely on something is not an easy thing. And I think that to make something like this, we found a lot of people who, not just ourselves, but other people who. We found that we can collaborate with, and it can be so daunting at times that it's a very necessary support network to have, and we get over it. We get over our fights. Someone's usually wrong is what it boils down to, and the other one realizes that he was wrong.
Last question.
Hi, I was wondering if you could talk about sound for a minute. Could you talk about your philosophy, how involved you are with post, how much of the dialogue was ADR versus production? If you want to touch on production sound, that would be really cool too.
Oh yeah.
Not a ton of ADR in the show.
I love a question about sound though, because sound is it is actually incredibly important. It's so funny because even when you're in the rough stage of the edit, it's hard for me because it still feels very sloppy until you get the whole edits do, until you get that final polish.
And I know
of sound.
Kowalski will agree with this, which is that student films, man, they look good, but they sound like shit most of the time, don't they? Not anymore.
Not anymore.
Is that
They
true?
figured it out. You figured it out.
I don't believe that.
Whatever.
I don't believe that. But I think it's fine if they don't sound like shit. Great, because I think it is one of the most important things that can elevate even a short film to another level. It does. If it looks gorgeous and it sounds bad, it doesn't matter. Someone's going to turn it off. It's so important. And even when we're writing, for us, sound is so important in terms of creating mood and atmosphere. And a lot of it also is transitions. And you don't have to write like this, but we're always in our scripts. It's always we're adding whoosh and whoom and she shuts the drawer and whoom, and then we're somewhere else. And that's our scripts have 100 sound effects in them. It's so. But our sound guys love it because even at that early stage, you're thinking about it and you're thinking about how, it's something as simple as Hopper shuts a desk drawer and it leads to a skateboard going, and it's something as simple as that. It's not just visual; it's also sound, and that it helps you carry you through that story. And so, to us, it's such a huge part, and particularly in television, I think it's the aspect that sometimes gets overlooked and people aren't paying enough attention to it, and they're not utilizing it to the extent that they could.
Well, it's funny. It's kind of almost subconscious. Most people who are watching it don't notice it, but it really is the thing that kind of ties it all together. So we're there. Our sound team. We have 2 mixers and sound and a couple sound designers, and then they do their pass, and then we come in and we listen. and then we give notes, and we're sitting there. I mean, we're sitting there listening. I mean, we do it for every episode. I mean, it takes forever. But it's fun. But the other thing we're struggling with is like, do you mix for a movie? You don't, we're kind of in like not a theater this size actually. It's about half this size at Technicolor, and then it's like, but I'm not mixing for people in a movie theater. It's like we're trying to figure out who do we mix for, because people are watching the show in so many different ways, and a lot of people don't have 5.1 surround. A lot of people have stereo. It's like, so anyway, so we're actually still trying to figure out the best way to do the sound, but it is incredibly important.
That's great. All right, well, we're going to wrap this up. Matt, Ross, thank you
Thank
very
you.
much for being here today. You're truly an inspiration. I think I can say that for everybody in here, as well as campus-wide. We do have a lot of festivities going on this weekend that include our wonderful Duffer Brothers. And so hope to see everybody around this weekend. And again, thank you. That was great.
That was fun. Thank you.